Hello, this is Coding Gicha for full-stack developers. Let's install visual development tools in the established development environment to implement actual web applications. These days, Visual Studio Code is highly preferred as a development IDE tool. It is simple and modern, but also supports various environments and languages, so I think it is a truly integrated environment tool. You can download the installation file from the official Visual Studio Code site. You can download the installation file that matches your client environment. If you access the site in a Windows environment, you can download the X installation file right away, and if you are in a Linux environment, you can download the deb or RPM package file right away. Double-clicking the installation file will start the installation, but in Ubuntu, double-clicking the downloaded deb file will launch App Center. In Ubuntu, deb files for third-party applications downloaded externally are also installed through App Center or Package Manager. Ubuntu's App Center can search for and install applications in the repository, and Visual Studio Code can also be installed through the repository, but it supports slightly older versions, and problems occur when inputting a language of more than 2 bytes. It is recommended to download and install the deb file from the official Visual Studio Code site. Let's run Visual Studio Code. The customizing settings screen that sets AI features, themes, etc. will be displayed first. Let's pin Visual Studio Code to the dashboard. When you first run Visual Studio Code after installing it, the customizing settings screen will be displayed. If you ignore it and close it, the customizing settings screen will appear again every time Visual Studio Code is run. You have to go back to the welcome screen so that the customizing settings screen will not appear anymore. The welcome screen has menus related to starting and creating projects, but they are not very useful when actually used. Let's set it so that it does not appear anymore at startup. Visual Studio Code can be expanded with various extensions, and I will introduce the extensions that I personally recommend. Code Runner, Editor Config for VS Code, Log Viewer, Open Native Terminal, Scroll to Cursor, Sort Lines, Thunder Client, Toggle Excluded Files, Rainbow Brackets, etc. will make using Visual Studio Code more convenient. When I install the Rainbow Brackets extension, I get a message that it is no longer supported. This is because the Rainbow Brackets extension will no longer be updated after May 2022. I would like to disable this notification. I will also introduce personally recommended development language-related extensions. I will install the Dino extension. The runtime language for JavaScript has already established an ecosystem with Node.js, but it is becoming more distant from the standard ECMA script, so I personally prefer Dino. It is not only for back-end development, but also for front-end development, so it is supported in a more standard ECMA script syntax, so I personally recommend it. As a reference, since Visual Studio Code is supported based on Node.js, if the JavaScript format is set to the default format provided by Visual Studio Code, there may be some differences from ECMA script in the standard import syntax, which may be inconvenient. Extension pack for Java is a pack that collects Java-related extensions. A total of 7 Java-related extensions are integrated and installed. Since 7 extensions are installed, it takes some time. The Spring Boot related integration pack is the Spring Boot extension pack. A total of 3 extensions are integrated and installed. The Spring Boot extension pack also takes some time to install. If you develop with JSP, it is recommended to install JSP language support. JSP language support is an extension that supports Jakarta server pages, but other JSP support extensions are extensions that support Java server pages. Since Java EE has practically ended technical support, you must install an extension that supports Jakarta EE. Let's open the Visual Studio Code environment settings file. The environment settings of Visual Studio Code are saved as a final JSON file. I will also set the settings related to the extensions installed in the environment settings, so I installed the extensions first. I will skip the detailed explanation of the environment settings due to time constraints, and I will copy the settings that I personally prefer from the Coding Gicha's description page. I will cover the detailed explanation in a separate video. The font of the development tool should be a fixed width font to improve readability. D2 Coding and Nanam Gothic Coding are fixed width fonts for Korean developers. Korean characters are wider than ASCII code characters, but Korean fixed width fonts adjust the Korean code characters to twice the width of ASCII code characters. I will set the white space to be displayed. I recommend setting this to prevent typos and other mistakes. The integrated terminal in the Linux environment has a function to maintain and display the previous session. However, since the history function of the bash shell is already powerful in the Linux environment, I prefer to disable it. Personally, I feel it is cluttered. I am using Ubuntu OS as a development environment, and I personally prefer the background color of Ubuntu's native terminal, so I will match the background color of the panel of the integrated terminal to that of Ubuntu's native terminal. As mentioned earlier, I have set Dino to be used as the default formatter for TypeScript and JavaScript. JSON does not support comments, but JSON-C allows comments. The configuration file for Visual Studio Code is JSON, but comments are set to be enabled like JSON-C. It is recommended to keep JSON and JSON-C in Visual Studio Code's JSON formatter so that these settings are properly recognized. In Ubuntu OS, applications installed as deb files are managed by Software Updater, and update of Visual Studio Code is also done through Software Updater. Since the notifications that appear in the lower left corner are just distracting, I will set the update mode to manual. You must restart to reflect the changed update mode. When you save, a notification will appear telling you to restart Visual Studio Code. I will restart it. I will also set up keyboard shortcuts. This time, I will copy my personally preferred keyboard shortcuts from the Coding Gicha's description page. I often use Sublime Text when I want to work lightly and quickly when developing a script-based language that does not require compilation. I use the additional keyboard shortcuts to match the key combinations as much as possible with Sublime Text. I will also explain the keyboard shortcuts set in Visual Studio Code in detail in a separate video. For the database client in the GUI environment, I recommend Beekeeper Studio. When you click the download button, it asks for your email address, but you can skip it. Beekeeper Studio also supports various operating systems. Since I am using Ubuntu, I will download the deb file. The installation file for Windows is actually downloaded, but for Linux, instead of downloading the actual installation file, you can register a repository and install it with apt. In addition to the installation method with apt, the installation method with Snap Store is also supported. If you install with Snap Store, a slightly older version will be installed, so we recommend installing with apt. You need to download the GPG key of Beekeeper Studio with curl, so I will copy the command and run it. Let's run terminal. Paste the copied command and run it to download the GPG key. When pasting, a warning will appear because there is a sudo command. Let's run apt update to reflect the registered repository. Let's install Beekeeper Studio with apt. Installation will take some time. Let's run Beekeeper Studio. It supports connections to various databases. However, connection types with an asterisk must be upgraded by purchasing a license to use them. In the community version, there are restrictions on some connection types, but Beekeeper Studio alone will be enough for database query tasks. Let's connect to the demo database included as an example. The demo database type is SQLite. Let's run a demo query. It's quite modern and intuitive. There's an upgrade button in the upper right corner. It's an upgrade that allows you to use more exclusive features, but you have to purchase a license. The free trial lasts for 14 days and then you have to purchase a license. More useful features are added, but if you mainly use MariaDB, the community version is enough. In addition to the light theme, it also supports dark theme. If you want to upload the files you worked on to the server, an FTP client is useful. I recommend FileZilla. Windows users need to access the FileZilla site directly and download the X installation file, but Ubuntu users can simply install it with apt. You can also install FileZilla through the repository in App Center, but it can only be installed as a Debian package. Let's run FileZilla. It is an open source application and allows you to transfer files stably and quickly. I use it right away without much setup, but I will change the date format because it feels a bit messy. The default system format displays the date according to the system locale, which is not very readable. I prefer the ISO format, but I will set it to custom to display the day of the week. I also prefer the ISO format for the time format. If you want to display up to the second, you can set it to custom. I will check the reflected time format. Personally, I also enjoy using Sublime Text and Sublime Merge, but since people may have different preferences for these applications, I won't be covering them in this video. Thank you for watching.